Is this on? Hello, all. Welcome to another episode of Is This On podcast. I'm your host, Karthi. Today we have LK and Anirudh, the co-founders of Fin&Me Wealth Partners LLP. They are here to help us unpack the recent budget announcements, specifically around investments and capital gain taxes. I also have personally some questions about how do we, navigate this new budget that has been announced and try to understand how we can, invest and what is the changes that are there and what is it that we can do with this new budget in play. So, welcome LK, welcome Anirudh, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, hi, this is LK. Happy to be here and share our thoughts on whatever is going on around the recent budget and how it's going to have an impact in our daily lives.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Anirudh?
this is Anirudh here, and thanks for having us over, Kati. I think we've been talking about this for a while now, so glad that
Yeah.
we're finally able to do this session.
Yes.
Glad to be here, and hope we have a very interesting chat today.
Yeah, thanks for the invite also, guys. Thanks for coming up with this idea as well. Even I didn't even think of it, so thanks for that. Anyway, let's get into it. So now the budget has been announced. What are the key takeaways in this budget that has been recently announced?
Okay, so the overall budget has a lot of announcements, like usual, for the economy and all that, and I don't think it makes sense for us to get into a lot of those details today.
Okay.
So I would probably say let's focus on the personal finance aspects of the budget
Perfect. Yeah.
for regular people, right?
Right.
And I think that there are two key points that affect most normal people, especially salaried folks. One is the change in tax slabs, in the new tax regime, which keeps happening. Every few years, people have been calling out for a reduction of taxes, and there's been some changes in the tax regime. That's one. And the other thing, which is probably something that most people would be eager to understand, is the change in taxation of profits from various asset classes, especially real estate and equity. So if you have stocks and mutual funds or real estate, and you're selling them, and the way these things are taxed and how the tax are calculated, I think that's going to be a bit different. So I think these are probably the two main things that people will be interested in, and maybe you can focus on that.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, maybe to add on to that, I think another interesting question that is popping up these days is regarding the old versus new tax regime as well.
Oh yeah.
So maybe
definitely.
something around that, because a lot of people have questions on why everything is getting done only in the new tax regime, what's happening with the old one,
Exactly.
and who will have to use the old one in comparison to the new one and stuff. So maybe that is also something that we would like to share some light on.
Sure, I would definitely would like to know what is happening with this budget regime as well, because it's very confusing for me as well. It was very confusing. So when I did the filing this time, I think it was much simpler, which in a way kind of feels nicer. But again, I don't know what has changed and how much it has affected me, and it's a bit of a it's a bit confusing, at least for me. I've been reading about it, and there is a lot of talk about change in the budget slabs, and also there is talks about indexation clauses that has been removed. So I'd like to know a little bit more about that. So with this, how does that affect a guy like me who is trying to navigate this space, especially in this budget lab? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think that is a quote that floats around in the internet, attributed to Einstein, but I don't know if Einstein actually said it or not. But it goes something like, one of the most difficult things in the universe is income taxes. Right, and this is the guy who worked on relativity and everything. So it's like, I think this is like a common thing everywhere, that taxes are inevitable in every country, and the common person still doesn't exactly understand how the taxes works. We always end up having to rely on a CA or some experts to make all this happen. So in terms of the recent changes, so I think what you need to worry about is two things, right? One is the tax regime.
Right.
So for that, people usually wait until January when the company asks for their investment proofs, and then they scramble to give stuff at that time, and then or they'll worry about it at the time of tax filing in July, probably on 31st, on the last day.
Correct.
So people don't usually think about taxes for the rest of the year.
Correct.
But we need to take ownership of this because these are inevitable. And if you are getting paid, if you're getting salary, if you have income, taxes are inevitable, and everybody needs to take some amount of ownership of this. And you don't have to understand everything. You can take the help of a CA or a financial advisor or somebody who's knowledgeable about all this. But people need to sit together and figure out what is their expected income for that financial year, what is going to be the tax outflow, whether the old regime is better for them or the new regime. All these things can be calculated in advance. And accordingly, if they are going with the old regime, maybe plan some deductions, plan some investments that will reduce the tax outflow. And all of this has to be done proactively, right? So in this budget, the tax regimes have been changed, but again, next year it might change again. We don't know. So that's one thing. And the other things again in terms of the changes in the way the profits are taxed. So if you have real estate, if you're going to make a sale, if you have been planning to do that, the way it is taxed will be changed. So previously the rule was it was 20% with indexation. Now it's going to be 12.5% flat. We'll explain. Maybe we can
Sure.
all the
Okay.
in
Let's
detail,
let's.
but
Okay. Got
these
it.
are the kind of changes that they need to worry about.
Okay. So okay, when we talk about the slab system, right? So you were talking about filing in the month of January and March, which is when we usually do all the investments and try to show whatever we have invested so far and do that, right? So when we talk about the benefit of the current system, so what benefits do we see here? Like, do we see any kind of benefits? Like, does it help us or
With the new regime. Okay.
yeah?
All right. Well, the benefit is basically simplicity.
Right.
So previously it was very complex with many deductions and stuff, and the new regime basically does away with all of those deductions and has a very fixed tax slab. This is supposedly the benefit. But the thing is, the common man wouldn't worry about simplicity if he can reduce the taxes. So let's say there is somebody who has a house that he's staying on rent, has a HRA component in the salary, or probably has a home loan as well, and has the potential to invest a certain amount in the Section 80C, the tax saving investments section. And even if it is complex, that person might prefer to go to a CA, and then that person might say, if you do all of these things, you can save tax, and everybody will be going towards that. So I think even though the new tax system is simpler, I think most people would prefer to reduce taxes rather than choose the simpler version. But for people who don't have those deductions, I think the new tax regime is a lot easier to understand. So they don't have to worry about which is the best way to save tax and all that.
Right.
And they can simply. So this is the benefit. But
Right.
the broader point here is that previously government gave incentives to invest in PPF, in
Correct.
VPF, in equity link, basically tax saving mutual funds and all that.
Correct.
And basically, it was like if you invested in those assets, you can reduce the tax flow. So reducing tax was an incentive to make people invest more. Now, with the new regime, those things have been taken away. So essentially, there is no more hand holding. This means people have to take it upon themselves to figure out what is the best way to save tax, what is the best way to invest for the long term.
Exactly.
And
Right.
these things are not tied anymore
Right.
in the new regime. So if you're choosing simplicity with the new regime, it also means that you are now an adult and you will have to make your own planning in terms of investing for retirement, children's education, house purchase, and so on. So I think that is something that people need to be cognizant of.
Okay. Perfect. That kind of helps me understand. Okay, so you kind of nicely put, like, you're now an adult. You have to deal with the investment yourself, rather than government always showing you the carrot and saying, hey, why don't you invest here a little bit
Yeah.
more,
That's
things like that.
primarily what has changed, if you see, right?
Right.
So from the old regime to the new regime, if you see, there is a lot of hand-holding which was happening in the old regime, and
Exactly. Yeah.
you have to save X amount. You have to do something like this, buy a house. We will give you that. All those things were there because till some time back, government was some in a way planning everything for you.
Right.
Yeah, but what we can understand from the new regime is that government want people to be more matured in the way they approach their own
Right.
future planning,
Hmm.
and how they would want to have savings for themselves, and stuff like that. So basically, we can clearly see that that's the direction that the government is trying to take.
Right.
And as common man, what we have to do is we have to completely understand what we want to do in the longer run, and based on that, we have to plan everything.
Okay.
It is, in a way, it is there's a freedom for us to plan based on what we need. But if we look at it in the other way, if we don't plan anything, then there is a high risk that we might end up in a place where we will be very, short in terms of what we require in a long term, and getting to a position where we might not be able to spend on things which we might need in the future. So
Understood. So
Yeah.
you basically, it's like,
I have one thing to
Yeah,
add on
go
to
ahead.
that, but once you finish this, I'll jump in. Please
Yeah,
continue.
no. What I meant to say is, basically, the onus is on us right now to figure out what we want to do in the long run, how much we would like to save, where we would like to invest, and so on and so forth. But as a common man, me being a common man, right? So I am having trouble understanding the financial markets, right? So I know there is stocks, there is mutual funds, there is your usual route, which is the LIC policy or insurance policy that you can take. And apart from that, you can invest in land, like either you can buy a house, or you can buy a plot, or invest in that, or you can buy some gold bonds, or like you can invest in jewelry or something like that, which we traditionally what we do, right? So we traditionally, this is what we have been doing. Like, we either invest in gold jewelry, or we have invested in lands. Now the additional thing of mutual funds and stocks that have come into play. So this is like the usual stuff that are there. But as a common man, the problem now comes is that, where do we invest, how do we do that? So what kind of investment style that a person has to take? How do a person do that? What is your recommendation on that?
Yeah, so I think where to invest, the last question that somebody should answer. Like you mentioned, there are numerous avenues to invest, numerous products, different asset classes, and people should not be chasing after the fanciest asset class, at every time, and just saying, you know what, let me have a little bit of gold, let me have a little bit of mutual funds, let me have some stocks, let me have crypto. That should not be the way one should think about investing. So
Right.
investing should always have a goal and a purpose, which essentially means a time horizon. If you don't have any goals, it can also be a general wealth building. But most people, whether they realize it or not, they do have goals. Retirement is a uh, standard goal for most salaried people. The previous
Correct.
generation had pension, or the kids were taking care of their parents. That was in a joint family setup. That was default. Today's generation doesn't want to be dependent on their children. They want to be financially independent. They want the children to have their own lives. So, which means you need to make sure that you have saved up enough for your retirement, and you are able to live off that corpus. So that is one default goal. And then if you have children, higher education has become very expensive right now.
Correct.
For school fees, you can manage with your monthly budget, but
Yeah,
it's very
definitely.
difficult to plan for college fees without thinking about it in advance. If you wait until the last minute, most likely you will end up having to take an education loan or something like that,
Correct.
which is not recommended. So the people end up having these goals by default. And once you have a goal, then you have a time horizon. You need money when your kid is turning 18,
Right.
and that time frame determines where you can invest, how much risk you can take, and how to manage that risk, because investment in any asset class always carries a amount of risk.
Right.
So the goal should be to how do you minimize risk, how much should you invest in order to get to a corpus that is enough for my goal at that time when I need.
Right.
So there is a famous Facebook group called Asan Ideas of Wealth that I follow, and the moderator Ashar Johari coined a term called Creton,
Okay.
corpus required at the time of need, and that is the goal that you should aim for. So if a college fees is costing about 15 lakhs today, in about 18 years it might cost 4 times that.
Mm.
So that is a corpus that you require at that time, and when your kid is turning 18 you need that corpus, and you can't be
Trying
waiting
to figure
for
out
the markets
how
to
to get,
turn
yeah.
convenient at the time when you need the money. If the markets are down, then you can't tell your kid that wait for a couple of years before you go to college. You can't do that. So planning has to be done based on the need and time horizon. So based on that, you decide how much of money can you invest in risky assets like equity or equity mutual funds or things like that. How much do you need to put in stable things like mutual funds or FDs or the Sukanya
Excellent.
Samriddhi Yojana
Okay.
and all of that. So that should determine the products and your style of investing.
And just to add on, since you mentioned, there are real estates, gold, and everything.
Right.
So, the base thing which kind of stitches everything together is, like Anirudh pointed out, it needs to be the goal based on which the whole financial planning should happen. Which means, we also have to make sure that it is available at the time of need, and there is liquidity that is there, which is associated with that, so that if when we need it, the amount should be coming to us in a much more easier way rather than a very complex way, like if it is through a transaction through a real estate or any some other asset classes which might kind of not be that liquid like what some other asset classes may be like. So there are different factors that are in play here, but the base that we all have to understand is that having a goal will make sure that we are planning in the right way, and we manage the risk in the right way, so that when we reach that time frame when we need that money for a specific goal, then we can be sure that okay, that money is available for that, for fulfilling that goal, and that should be the way that the whole financial planning should happen.
Okay, got it. So usually they would say, right, like you should have a thumb rule of investing so much percentage of your salary towards savings, and you should have so much percentage. Do you have any sort of those numbers that you have? I've heard so many numbers, but I don't know exactly which numbers to follow. So do you have any numbers? Do you have any
Yeah.
idea?
So for each person, the actual situation will always vary.
Right.
So by default, I would recommend that everybody should do an exercise of this financial planning to figure out how much do they need to invest in order to get to the goal that they have. For one person might have a retirement goal. Other person might say, I just want to get my kids to study and they'll take care of me. So this varies from family to family. So they need to do this exercise individually.
Okay.
But thumb rules are thumb rules, with that disclaimer out of the way that the thumb rules are not going to fit for everybody. What we would say is people should invest a minimum of 30% of
Right.
their income
Mm.
for long-term goals like retirement. And again, this comes from the other thumb rule that you should invest roughly the amount that you're spending on essential expenses today. So, for
Oh,
example, if
okay.
you have an income of 1 lakh per month,
Right.
and your essential expenses are around 30,000 or so,
Mm-hmm.
and you would need an equivalent of 30,000 adjusted for inflation at the
Mm.
time of retirement. So
Okay.
you should be investing another 30,000. So you are spending 30,000 essential expenses. You are investing another 30,000, which will grow and make sure that it takes care of retirement. And then you're left with 40,000, within which you need to plan for your wants and luxury expenses, your Swiggy and going out and movies, travel, and all of that. All that should come
Got it.
within that 40%.
Yeah.
But if you have a home loan, or if you want to save for kids' education, everything, then
The
that thumb
percentage
rule
will
will
change.
vary, and
Right.
it makes it
Right.
different. But this is what we call the rule of the 1/3, which is again, rough thumb rule.
Right.
Invest a third, spend a third on essential expenses, and then the balance, one third, you can use it for your splurge expenses.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we were talking about the types of asset types, as you call it, right? So we were talking about that, and I was talking about the land, the buying land and all, because that is somewhat very synonymous with us Indians, right? So we generally invest in lands. We try to buy a land, just, and this is kind of a at least I don't know for the current generation how it is. At least for our generation, it is like one of the major goals you have in your life is to either buy a land or buy a flat or something like that, right? So, and from what I've seen from the budget announcements is that there's been a lot of talk about the LTCG, which is the long-term capital gains. There has been some changes on that, and there are also been changes on the indexation, where they are saying that because of these changes you would now uh, tend to lose a little bit more or gain a little bit more, which is not, I mean, I try to also trade through that and try to understand, but I've not got a very clear idea. So how does that, but what is it first, and how does that affect us like a common man? How does it affect a common man?
All right. Okay. So the tax rule previously was that if you sold real estate, land or property, the taxes that you would have to pay would be 20%, but the 20% is not on the absolute gains. So they use a method called indexation, which adjusts your purchase price uh, to inflation.
Okay.
So there are ways to do this. RBI releases certain inflation related data called indexation data, and based on that you can calculate. So if you purchased a property 20 years ago for 10 lakhs, and with inflation that amount should be equal to, let's say, 40 lakhs today.
Okay.
And let's say you are selling the property for 1 crore today. So you in the old system, if you bought the property for 10 lakhs, we would consider that it is equivalent to 40 lakhs in today's value.
Okay.
Therefore, when you're selling it for 1 crore, the profit is only 60 lakhs, and then on that 60 lakhs you pay 20% of 60 lakhs as the tax. This was the old system.
Okay.
In the new system, they've completely done away with this indexation concept. It's just a flat 12.5% on the gains. So if you bought for 10 lakhs, sold for 1 crore, you would have 90 lakhs as the absolute gain, and it would be 12.5% on that absolute gain.
Oh, I see.
So although the tax percentage feels like it's come down from 20% to 12.5%,
Yeah.
the actual taxes that you pay need not always come down. So depending on how much your property has appreciated,
Right.
you might end up paying more tax or less tax in the new system.
Oh, I see. So that you mean to say, like, how much over the delta? So the higher the delta, you might have to pay a little bit more tax, or depending on
Correct.
like what was your the amount you paid during when you bought it like 10-15 years ago, and what you're selling it now, and again I mean,
So let me clarify one thing there. So basically, I think whether you will pay more or less depends on how much your property has appreciated.
Exactly.
So
Correct.
I think LiveMint did a feature recently where they calculated that if your property has appreciated by 10% or more,
Right.
Then in the new system your taxes will be lower.
Right.
But if it has appreciated by less than 10%, then most likely your taxes will be higher than before.
Oh, I
So
see.
it depends on your luck when you purchased it, how much your property is appreciated.
Right.
And
and there's one thing I think we all agree is that again these are rules for now. Again, we don't know what's going to happen in 10 years,
Absolutely.
15 years. The rules could change, and at the time, if whatever governments is there, they might again change the rules, so we would never know. But it's always good to invest in such lands, right? Because land always appreciates. That's the kind of golden rule That is right.
Well, yeah, so we actually would probably have a slightly different take on that. We probably
Okay.
won't take that as an absolute statement.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think there are two aspects there. One, in terms of appreciation, I think for land, it's always about location, always about luck.
Correct.
So I think there are a lot of factors that go into appreciation of land, and the kind of growth that we saw over the last 20 years, especially in the early part of the millennia, may not continue the same way for the next decade or two. So some pockets will definitely appreciate, but
Right.
I think it's a different story. But the bigger point we're trying to make is that uh, in terms of whether an investment is appropriate or not, I think one of the factors to consider is liquidity.
Correct.
So uh, again, if you're investing for a particular goal, let's say you have a piece of land, you want to sell it to fund your kids' education.
Mm-hmm.
Just maybe 6 months before the kid is about to go to college, you start your uh, process of looking for a prospective buyer, and at that time you may discover that it wasn't as easy to sell as you thought initially. That process could end up taking longer. Maybe the market is down, so people are not willing to buy. There could be many reasons.
Correct.
So I'm not saying this will happen all the time or every time, and a lot of people who are well experienced in buying and selling land all the time, and they might be able to manage it. But what we would say is always think about the liquidity. Don't wait until the last minute. If you
Right.
have land that you plan for a goal like this, where you know that when your kid turns 18, you need the money at the time. We prefer that you start it early and make sure that that amount is available in a liquid manner, uh, well in advance. And if you are starting now to invest in your kids' education, we would say you can start investing in mutual funds, and according to your risk appetite and time horizon and everything,
Right.
because this is completely liquid. Because
Correct.
within 3 working days you will get the money in your bank account, so you
Right.
don't have to worry about liquidity. And
Right.
we would prefer that people invest in liquid instruments
Oh, I
like
see.
mutual
Okay.
funds, which is meant for the retail investor, and it is
Right.
liquid, available instantly, and easy to manage without any external headache. So we would uh, prefer that.
Okay. And this rule, like whatever this rule for LTCG and indexation, does not apply for equity funds or mutual funds. It's the same thing, or is it different?
Okay, so equity funds were also taxed. There was a long-term capital gains that was 10% before, and that has now become 12.5%.
Mm.
That difference is not. It is still high, and a lot of people are definitely not going to be happy about this. But that difference is not as bad as the removal of indexation in the in real estate.
Oh, I
That
see.
is one thing.
Okay.
On the debt fund side, anyway, they've already changed it. They've already the removal of indexation on the debt fund side already happened in 2023, and previously the same thing applied even for debt funds, where if you purchase debt funds uh, 10 15 years ago and you're selling it now, you could say that this was my purchase price, this is the equivalent in terms of inflation, and that will reduce your profit, and you paid 20% tax only on that profit. So that used to be the system in debt funds, debt mutual funds before.
Okay.
Now that has also been removed, and that's now in slab rate. So yes, these things are there, but I think the bigger point I think we would try to make is that uh, whatever investments you're making, it should be focused on the goal, and taxes should not be your primary variable in determining where to invest. Because like as you just mentioned moments ago, these tax rules are always subject to change. So today, if you decide to invest in one asset instead of another asset because the tax
Right.
rules are convenient for you, by the time you need the money in 10, 15, 20 years, the rules might have changed.
Correct.
So it doesn't make sense to invest according to the tax rules. What one should do is invest based on your needs, time horizons, goals, risk appetite, and all that across different asset classes, diversified depending on your needs. And then at the time of need, you will have to pay whatever taxes is there at that time, which cannot be predicted
Correct.
so many years in advance.
So this is, I think this is the problem that everyone kind of grapples with, right? Where do we invest and how do we invest? So let me give you an example, right? So let's talk about a person who is 25 years old, young, who is just starting their career, who has not got too much loans or anything like that. So when he's getting into the work stream and he's starting earning, what would be the best way to invest, or what are the best possible avenues for him to invest? The reason I'm asking this is because, like, I know a lot of young people who are just now getting into the into the workforce, and they have started earning money and they've started spending money as well. And whenever I ask them, have you invested in something, they said, investment? What investment? I don't know. I'm just doing I'm spending whatever I'm earning. And of course there is insurance, but I'm not too sure about it. And they are kind of like not very clear about where to invest and how to go about it. So if there is a person like that, what would be the best investment avenue for him?
Okay. All right. So for a 25-year-old, it is very difficult to start imagining or thinking about retirement.
Right.
But that is one of the first things that they should be investing for, because of the time value of money and because of compounding.
Correct.
If a 25-year-old is likely to work for 35 years and retire at 60, he or she has a very long time horizon, and even investing small amounts, like we mentioned, 20-30% of their salary, even from the age of 25, that will go a very long way in securing their future. And if they want to retire early with the whole fire and everything, starting early at 25 will give them a good head start, so that if they are able to continue investing as their income keeps growing and increasing that investment amount accordingly, they will be able to be in a much more comfortable place after about 20 years of investing,
Right.
around their 40s.
Right.
And they can definitely diversify. They can invest across different asset classes. Normally, we don't recommend that a 25-year-old starts investing in a house by getting a home loan.
Yeah. Correct.
That has been the standard advice. Especially in today's day and age, you don't know where you will end up in a few years, because you might have to be mobile in terms of moving to different cities for your job.
Right.
So until you know that this is where you're going to marry, this is where you're going to settle down with the kids, we don't recommend that people buy real estate that early. But investing in mutual funds, in a mixture of equity and debt mutual funds with a proper asset allocation, leaning more towards the risky side, 60-70% in equity when you are younger, because you have time, you will be able to take on more risk. Even if the market goes down for whatever reason, you have enough time for it to recover.
Right.
So that would be the way to go. And if you additionally have goals like you want to buy a bike, go for travel and all that, we would consider them as short-term goals, and you can invest accordingly. We won't recommend investing in equity for those goals. If your goal is like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, less than 5 years away, we recommend investing them in safer debt mutual funds, or you can even keep them in your FDs and RDs. So those things separate. Right. So to summarize, what we would say is invest for the long term. Invest at least 30%, if possible, calculate your requirement and invest accordingly. Invest for the long term, save for the short term, and then spend only from what's left. Right. So that way you have a structure, because most of us in our generation, we end up spending first on things that we need and want, more on wants as well. And then we try to save and invest with what's left, which is usually not much.
Correct. That's true. So, I mean, that's how we have been we have been doing it for so long, right? So the changing into midstream is always a tough challenge. but it's
Yeah.
it's very important. So how do you?
Also,
Yeah,
just to add, right? So
yeah.
also, in today's gen, if you see people just buy things impulsively, and by what
Oh
Anirudh
yeah,
just pointed out,
yeah.
if they have some kind of a structure and a plan, it is always better, right?
Right.
Because it's not necessarily only for like long-term requirements like a retirement or marriage, education, stuff like that. So it can also be short-term, like what he pointed out, like a travel or getting a bike or a car or anything,
Right.
but planning for that in advance rather than just go and buy something on a loan.
Impulsively.
So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
so for example, people buy an iPhone and then change it in 2 years when another version comes in.
Yeah.
So they do all this, and especially during that time, they do a lot. So this kind of structure will also give them a clear idea of what they have to do
Right.
from a long-term perspective, no short-term perspective, and by saving up and investing for that in advance, it will also give them a clear picture, and not taking loans will be an additional benefit there, because instead of giving out interest,
Right.
planning in advance will also help them to save up and buy something in a proper way. So
Okay.
that kind of saves for a lot of other things on the future as well. So
Perfect, perfect. And one, if let's say, who's sort of the midstream, like 40s and mid 40s. So what kind of avenues does that appear for him, where he has a family and he has a kid? Take my case.
Yeah.
Take my case as example. If I am, what would you suggest for me? What kind of venues would you suggest for me?
Yeah, it's always easier to plan for a 25-year-old because it's a clean slate, starting
Exactly.
fresh, easy to give advice. But planning for a somebody in their late 30s, early 40s, it's always a bit difficult because uh, you will now have less time to achieve your goals. And
Correct.
I think we wrote an article on our blog some time back where we talked about the importance of time. More than the amount of money that you're investing, time is a very crucial variable in investments. So even if you invest less, but you keep investing for a very long time, that becomes the value of time, and in that compounding equation, that grows to a significant value. But somebody in their 40s has less and less time to meet their goals, so it's always a bit difficult. But at the same time, they're not going to start from zero. They'll probably have some provident fund. They'll have some
Right.
LIC insurance money coming in. They'll probably have a plot of land, and they'll have something here and there. But most often than not, what happens is all of these assets would be scattered and not tied to goals, like we mentioned earlier. Most likely they would have, PF would be forced, so that would be there. They might have made some stock investments based on some stock tips from their friends. They might have bought some mutual funds, maybe 5 or 10 or 20 of them, without tagging to any particular goal.
Right.
So I think such a person should sit and figure out two things. First, they should find out what is their current lifestyle expense, how much of the cash flow is going for essential expenses, how much is going for luxury expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Luxury mean discretionary expenses, and then using that, they should calculate how much money they need for retirement. uh, 40 is still fine because you still have about 15-20 years. It's still not too late, but you need to give that 15-20 years of time for your money to grow.
Right.
So once you've done this planning, then you calculate how much is your existing corpus and existing investments, how much is it going to be worth in 15-20 years.
Right.
How much of that can be used, and tag each of those investments to a particular goal. Then you have a structure, and then figure out how much is the additional incremental investment you need to make from this point onwards. And most often they're not somebody doing this exercise for the first time in their 40s. If they do it correctly, they will not be able to sleep for a few days.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
because the realization would hit them like lightning. But
Right.
the thing is always better late than never. And in personal finance, we always say that whatever the Excel sheets say,
Mm.
there is always going to be some trade-off here and there.
Right.
So if you are not able to invest that much, you need to reduce your lifestyle expectations.
Right.
It cannot be possible that you live like an extremely luxurious life right now and invest very less, and then in retirement again you want to continue the same kind of
Right.
lifestyle. That
Right.
will not be possible.
Okay.
Either you can at the same time I need to say that we are not recommending that you invest all your surplus money and live like a monk right now without any material comforts. Don't buy a car, don't buy a phone. We are not saying that. There is always a balance between today and tomorrow,
Right.
and each person has to figure out that balance for themselves. They
Right.
need to figure out how much can they afford to invest without compromising on their lifestyle today.
Mm.
At the same time, ensure that they have a reasonably comfortable lifestyle in retirement when the income is going to stop, because it's very difficult for people to imagine a day when they're not going to have income, because you've been working if you're in your 40s, you've been working for over 2 decades,
Right.
and you've just taken your salary for granted,
Right.
and it
Absolutely.
is very difficult to think of a day when that salary will stop.
Correct.
And
Absolutely.
especially after seeing your parents not having to worry about it because they probably had pensions or something, so
Absolutely. Yeah.
the cash flow never stopped for them. So you're not used. We don't have role models. We don't have that many role models in our families. Maybe we do, but maybe we're not focusing on them. Some people who have been become too dependent on their kids,
That's
or
very true. That's very true.
the various different types of horror stories. So
Yeah, definitely. And to the audience in general, I'm neither living a monk life nor I'm splurging anything like that. I just took me as an example, and I think he also meant that. That's what he meant.
absolutely, I was not talking about you. I was just talking about
I know, I know.
in general.
Just clarifying it for the audience. Just clarifying for the
Absolutely.
audience. Yeah.
There's another interesting anecdote that we want to share. I think LK talked about iPhones a little while back.
Yeah.
I think we did another uh, article on our website where we calculated it's all about habits, right? So somebody who always ends up buying the latest iPhone model, lakh plus whatever the
Correct.
prices, they
Yeah.
keep buying that, and they keep replacing it every 2 years
Two
because they
years.
get
Yeah.
bored and there's latest model and all that. And another person is each time they buy a 1 year older model, which is usually available for cheap,
Right.
and uh, they also keep the phone for 4 years.
Right.
Apple gives you OS updates for a long time and everything,
Right.
and they replace the phone every 4 years. So the difference between these two, assuming that the second person is able to save up this money and invest it,
Right.
in about 10 years, it amounts to about 25 lakhs.
Right.
And 25 lakhs is
Wow.
not nothing.
Yeah, definitely
So,
it's not nothing.
it's all about tiny habits that you do on a day-to-day basis.
Mm.
It's all about having better awareness about where your money is coming, where it's going, and just having a better relationship with your money. And that's all there is to it. Once you have a better awareness, tiny change in habits today will help you have a more secure, comfortable future.
Okay.
Okay.
And what kind of like tools does one need to do this kind of analysis and all these things that you're talking about?
Um, uh, well, I think a basic Excel would do,
Oh,
or
okay.
to figure out your cash flow, just a pen and paper would do.
Yeah. Okay.
Just sit with your spouse and figure out how much are each of you spending on not just groceries, but also your Swiggy and Zomato and everything. And you would be surprised to figure out, especially with your credit cards. We didn't talk about credit cards in this podcast,
I
but
was about to come to that. Yeah.
yeah, with credit cards, it makes it even more difficult because you just keep swiping, and you maybe pay the amount the next month. But when you sit and do this calculation properly for the whole year,
Hmm.
some people are surprised that their monthly surplus is usually negative, which
Correct.
means they're actually spending more than their income.
Correct.
They don't realize this because 1 month you are spending less, another month you're spending more. When you're spending more, you swipe your credit card and then you pay it off for the next 1 or 2 months. You don't realize it. On average, you are actually spending more than your income.
Correct.
And that's what credit cards can do. And credit cards are excellently rewarding with points and everything. All that is always there, but
Right.
only for those people who have a better understanding of their cash flow. Otherwise, you
Correct.
might end up spending more money. So simple Excel, notepad, pen and paper, good
Great.
enough.
Great.
Basically, you should
That's
be
good job.
conscious about what you're spending and what you need from a long-term perspective. That's pretty much what you have to do, right?
Yeah,
But
I understand. Yeah.
you just mentioned about 20-year-old, what a 40-year-old needs to do. A
Yeah.
common thread between all of them is being conscious about what they need, what is their goal, how much they
Right.
would need.
Right.
Because we have clients, or when we have had some initial discussions, 40-plus-year-old, they think that with the current corpus of some X amount,
Right.
which currently seems to be a lot,
Right.
they think that they are done. They can retire right now,
Right.
but they don't know, okay, they have to live with this for the next 40, 50 years, and there is
Right.
something called as inflation. Yeah.
Right.
So there are certain aspects that people have to understand. It might sound complex, but actually it is simple. if
Right.
if everything can be put into a structure, and if people can plan properly, it is a very simple activity. And since these things are something long term, it has to be a habit,
Hmm.
basically, which we do on an everyday basis or every month basis. And then in the next 15, 20 years, everyone can be in a much better position.
Okay.
Right?
Excellent.
So,
Excellent.
yeah.
So from what you guys are saying is there are three or four things that I picked up, and correct me if I'm wrong. So first know how much you are earning versus how much you're spending. That's the most important point. First point. Second is understand what are your wants and needs, and make sure you have that prioritized correctly. Like you said, the iPhone is a very good example. You don't need an iPhone every 2 years. You can as well buy a cheaper one, or older generation, and run with it for 4 5 years, which it comes works spectacularly well, and the rest of it you can invest. Third is you need to also maintain a balance between like how much you want to invest and how much you want to have it, because liquid cash flow is very very much important in these days, where you need immediate cash. If you want immediate cash, you cannot have everything tied up in one particular asset and then not being able to take it out. So you also need to understand where you're investing or not how much you're investing. You need to have that sort of balance. And finally, you need to have a good sense of like make it like a habit, like a good habit, where you do this repeatedly every month, or like do we repeat it every month, or do we repeat it every quarter or every year? How do you do that?
It depends, right? There might be certain things that you will have to do every day. There
Right.
might be certain things which you will have to do on a monthly basis or a
Right.
quarterly basis. But that doesn't matter. So basically, the point is, if you have a goal which is on a,
Okay.
something for a yearly requirement, or if it is something for a monthly requirement, then you have to plan accordingly. That's
Right.
pretty much it.
So
So, for
plan
example, there is
accordingly.
a school fees that is coming up every year. For that, maybe if you plan on a monthly basis and keep some X amount aside
Right.
for that from your income,
Mm.
then when the time comes for the fees payment, it will be much easier,
Easy.
right?
Right.
So it is not that it is happening only in that particular month. For example, in October, if you have to pay a fees
Right.
for your kids, it's not that in October only it's happening. You know that well in advance. So if you can plan it on a monthly basis and keep some X amount for that,
Right.
you will not even know that you are saving for it, and you'll have that corpus during that time. If not, suddenly paying a 1 lakh or 2 lakh
Correct.
fees would be really a huge amount.
Correct.
This,
Absolutely.
in the
Yeah.
same way, if there is a midterm plan, like a 3 year, from 3 years from now, if you are planning for a Europe trip,
Mm.
then if you can plan for it on a monthly basis right now for the next 3 years,
Mm.
even without knowing or even without taking a loan or something, you can just complete the whole Euro trip.
Correct.
And the
Correct.
same way for a retirement, if it
Right.
is something down the line 20 years from now, if you
Right.
do that on a monthly basis, so it's all based on the goal. So again, everything is tied to the goal, and if you can plan everything from a short term, mid term, and a long term perspective, and
Mm.
for that, obviously you have to do things which you have to change on a daily basis. Yeah, it's all
Mm.
habits that needs to be changed. So if we
Okay.
change the habit, then it's going to have an impact from a long term perspective. Nothing will
Okay.
happen in one day.
Right.
Everything needs to be built over a time,
Right.
and that time needs to be given. So
Okay.
that's how it needs to be worked on.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense, you guys. And one last thing before we go. So I just want to understand. So how do you guys? I know you guys have been helping a few people here and there. So do you also help? I mean, how do you guys work? Like, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. Okay. So we have some free tools on our website that I think would be useful for your audience. I think we talked about budgeting,
Right.
and we have some free Excel tools on our website. finandme.com
Right.
that you can download and you can use to calculate your income, cash flows, your monthly expenses,
Mm-hmm.
and the place where people usually trip up, which is non-recurring expenses, like
Correct.
your once or twice a year school fees, insurance fee, payments, car service, things like that.
Right.
And then also helps you keep a track of your all your assets. We have various assets. I think this is really the first exercise that anybody has to do to get their things in order. And after filling this Excel, then you can either sit with us, or you can go to other financial advisors who can help you map your goals to investments. And with us, we have a process as well, and we help people figure out how much to invest for their various goals, and help divide it into various asset classes according to asset allocation and everything.
Mm.
And we focus more on managing risk. We don't promise exceedingly high returns and things like that. We have a
Right.
more sensible uh, get rich slowly kind of approach.
Correct.
And like I mentioned, focus on Creton,
Correct.
corpus liquid at the time of need, and all of that.
Right.
And then our company's name is Fin&Me Wealth Partners.
Right.
So we think of ourselves as a partner in clients' financial journeys for their entire life. And we think that in personal finance we can help them with the finance part,
Mm-hmm.
depending on their personal requirements. So that's what we do. And yeah.
Okay, that sounds interesting. And I mean, just as a disclaimer, I haven't had discussions with you yet, guys, but definitely I feel like I should come and talk to you about my financial investments and what I've been doing so far, because I have, as I said, I have been managing as I've been managing for as long as I can remember, and I think
Yeah.
it's worthwhile to sort of engage with people who know about things and how things are managed, because not everything is known by everybody, right? So it's like you can do to a certain degree, you can save up to a certain degree, but if you really want to invest in something and you really want to make sure your future is secure, you have to talk to the specialist to understand how it is done, and what are the steps to do that. And I think it's highly important that one does follow in this current day and age. One definitely needs that kind of support. So
Yeah, I actually have
yeah.
a quick anecdote on that. So, after thinking about this for a very long time, yesterday I signed up with a gym trainer.
Oh, interesting.
So I always hate the gym, and whenever I try doing strength training, I've never done it consistently. If you
Yeah.
ask me to jog, I'll happily jog 5 days a week. But strength training is something that I never had a lot of interest in. But due to certain medical conditions, I was recommended by doctors to start strength training, and I've not been doing it very consistently. Uh, so this is an example of a situation where the gym trainer hasn't been telling me anything that I don't know
No,
already.
already. Exactly. Yeah.
Right? It's just biceps workout, triceps
Mm.
workout. With numbers, standard equipment in the gym. Right? He's not doing anything which is magic, but he brings a certain structure to the whole workout regimen. He knows what muscles to work out when, and how to divide the workouts across the week. Things like that, and of course the discipline. And this is sort of similar to what your financial intermediaries can do as well, right? So they bring a
Right.
certain structure to
Correct.
your otherwise cluttered financial life,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
help you follow things, especially when this is not something that you're very interested in. For example, my wife is not interested in finance. She's like, she outsources it to me and says, just you take care of it. And
Right.
there are many couples where suppose both people are like that.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
if you have interest, by all means, you can do everything by
Yeah.
yourself. But if you're not, but this is not something that you can say, I'm not interested, I'm not going to do it at all, because
Exactly.
you cannot afford to be that way.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's very critical to one's life, and yeah, definitely. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, the I mean, in the discussions that I had with my friends, and when it usually comes around finance and everything, is that yeah, it's always a tough thing to do. It's a very painful process to go through, because you have to save, you have to spend, you have to look at all the asset classes and try to understand how the market is reacting, where do we invest. It's a very confusing process in overall. um, but that's the general, and that can be applied anywhere. Like you said, for example, for the gym, right? You know what to do, but you don't know. When you go to gym, there are so many devices, and there is like cycle thing is there where you can do cycling. There is weight training, there is, there's a lot of things that you can do. But what is it that you do, in which order you do it, what
And
does do
that
you
also
want?
varies by people.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody
That's
who
exactly.
wants
Yeah,
to build muscles and
exactly.
is adoring Arnold Schwarzenegger would want something else, whereas
Yeah,
somebody who's doing it for health reasons and just for fitness
exactly.
would want something else. So that
Exactly.
customization also has to happen. Same thing with personal finance as well. It's more personal than finance.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's you hit it on the nail, actually. And that's exactly the point, right? So it similarly, when it comes to finance, it's the same situation. We all know there are different asset classes. We all know we have to spend so much money on investment, because that's very critical for us in the old age, and also for the kids education, and everything is there. But where do we do it, how do we do it? It's always great to have experts. When we get to talk to experts, we understand where is it, where we are versus where we should be, and where we could be, and all those things really puts a nice perspective in front of us, and it makes us understand a little bit more clearer. So anyway,
Absolutely.
thanks Anirudh, and thanks LK for your time, for patiently answering all the questions that I had. I have no idea how good questions were there, but these are the questions I had, and I wanted to talk to you guys for a long time, because I also wanted to understand these financial aspects of it. How do we save, what we do, and with this new budget announcements, I thought it's a wonderful idea. Why don't I talk to you guys and make a podcast out of it? So thanks for taking the
Absolutely.
time and
Absolutely.
talking to
Actually,
us.
talking about the budget, there's one last thing that I would like to say quickly,
Sure,
if I can.
sure, go ahead.
So we were talking about the government not incentivizing investments anymore, that you're an adult and all that.
Right.
The corollary to that is that the government is actually incentivizing spending, because more consumption is good for the economy right now.
Correct.
So previously we were investing because we want to save tax, save tax, save tax. And now, if we just go by what the government is incentivizing, which is to focus on spending, that is not good for us. So we need to, like we mentioned previously, we need to be mature about this whole thing, and have a balance between spending for today versus saving for tomorrow. So that's one thing. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, even with the whole taxes that we were talking about,
Mm-hmm.
like we mentioned, the taxes are going to be there only when you sell. And
Exactly.
given the way we were talking about all these investments, the investments should be for the long term, which means 10, 15, 20 years, whenever.
Correct.
So at that time, the rules will obviously be changed. So
Obviously change, yeah.
when we do investments, it should not be based on taxes at all. And the only other situation where you might actually end up facing this taxes is when you do this rebalancing. So we talked about investing according to an asset allocation, depending on the risk and everything.
Right.
So if you have an asset allocation where you are heavy on equity more than your asset allocation, you will have to sell it, make some profits, book the profits, and put it in a safer, stable asset class. When you do this, you will end up incurring tax depending on the rules of the day. But it is still something that is recommended that you do, because over the long term, your investments and your risk is more important, and the taxes are just a side effect that are inevitable. So at some point, we'll have to, we have no choice but to ignore the tax side of things and focus on our needs, our investments, our goals, our timeframes, our risk, because that's what
Understand.
is
Yeah,
important.
I understand
Yeah.
that. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay,
Makes
that's it
sense.
for me. My last point is done.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. It's a very important point as well. One should not invest because of taxes. That's a very good statement to have and look at as well, because definitely, as you said, these tax keeps changing. It might change in the future. So any investment based on taxes doesn't make sense. Only
Yeah.
you should invest based on what you want to achieve or what you have as a goal. That's very important.
Yeah, what is in our control is probably when you make return assumptions for the future, you can probably reduce your return assumptions by 1 or 2% to account for higher taxes or higher inflation. That's the best that we can do. That is within our control, and that will mean that we'll have to invest probably a little more than what we're investing, but that is the only thing that is in our control.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, and again, thank you again, Anirudh and LK, for your time, for patiently answering me.
Good questions, first questions.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks for having us.
Yeah, and we should do one more, maybe on credit cards, because I think that's a very important topic that you touched upon.
Actually, there's a lot of things that need to be discussed there for sure. Yes,
it's an ocean. It's an ocean of errors and freaky stories I've heard.
Yeah.
So we should definitely talk about that as well. Maybe we'll do another podcast on that as well. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for your time. And with that we come. Thank you guys. And with that we come to the end of this podcast. Be sure to check out our other podcasts that I have done so far, and also I'll be doing 1 or 2 more with these guys about credit cards. And if you have any other suggestions, please let me know, and I'll be happy to look at that as well. Thank you guys. Thanks for your time, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.